Welcome, welcome to another live class with me, Tanya. I am the creator of our She Speaks Women's Fluency program. And today I want to talk to you about why I am learning German as my second language. Third language. My second language is Spanish, and I have been learning Spanish, acquiring Spanish for more than 7 years. And I have gotten to a level where I'm ready to add another language. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that process for me and what it has been like. But first, I want to know about you, where you're listening from, if you've been here live with me before. And today I want to know, is English your first or second language, or is it indeed your third language? A little note there. Americans don't use the word indeed as much as you might hear other English speakers, like people from England or the UK or possibly other places that speak English, but occasionally, to really emphasize something like I just did, you will hear an American speaker use the word indeed. Is it indeed your third language? So, welcome everyone who is here with me for the live class today. And if you're joining for the recording, thank you for listening. If you're here live and you have a question, be sure to put your questions here. I'm just getting good at pointing in the wrong direction because it's opposite of my screen. So, a while back, maybe a year ago, I decided I wanted to learn a third language, that I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it because I want to continue practicing my second language, Spanish, because as you know, it takes a very, very long time to become fluent. But you can become conversational more quickly than you might think. Once I got to a certain level, I felt like I am pretty solid, meaning I'm pretty comfortable with the way that I learn Spanish, the way that I have conversations. I have a groove. In other words, I have a regular way of doing this that's working for me. I'll put this in the chat here. I have a groove. And so that seemed like it was a good time to start looking at what other languages I might want to learn. So I'm curious, if you were going to learn another language, I'm not saying it's a good time right now for you, but if you were going to learn another language, what language would that be? What's another language you would love to learn? Maybe you'll never learn it, but what's a language you would enjoy learning? So when I thought of this question, I really wanted to learn a different alphabet, something that was completely different than the ABCs that we use in English. And so I was doing some research looking at other languages with totally different alphabets. And at the same time, I have always wanted to learn German. Since I was very, very little, I wanted to learn German, and I thought that it was probably impossible because when I was a young child living in the United States, learning any language other than English was very, very expensive. We did learn other languages. Learn. I say it like this because we were required to take another language in high school and in college, which is what most people call university. Not most people, other countries. In the United States, we say college, but in other English speaking countries, they often say university. And but the thing is, the reason I put the quote marks up is that I didn't really learn the language. I didn't acquire the language. I couldn't speak. And I know a lot of you have had this experience too. If you've had this experience, let me know in the chat or in the comments. Have you taken a class and you just couldn't speak the language? I know that a lot of people have this experience, and I'll talk a little bit about why that is. So, because it was so expensive to actually learn a language, I thought I would never learn another language except for English, which is my native language. If I haven't met you before, I live here currently in Southern California, but I grew up in the middle of the United States, and I have another video coming soon about the 9 states I lived in, so be sure to watch for that. So, I wanted to learn German when I was younger because my dad spoke German until he was 5 years old at home. That's the language they spoke in their home, was German. And even after that, he said he was 9 or 10 before they started speaking English in his church. And even when they did speak English, they still spoke German. They would have one service in English and one in German. Pippa wants to say hi. Are you coming to say hi? Pippa is my cat. If you have not met Pippa before, she's thinking of, well, now she says, no, let go of me, let go of me. So I'm going to let go of her. Um, so I was talking about my dad. And I always wanted to learn German. He very, very rarely spoke German around me, but because it was a part of my history, I thought it would be great to learn German, but it was not one of the choices when I went to school. The choices were Spanish or French. And here's a little look into my personality. Everyone else was taking Spanish, and so I chose French. I can't say I regret that, but I do think it was a mistake because there is there are not a lot of places in the United States to use your French, whereas where I live now, I don't know if it's half, but a lot of the people here speak Spanish, and so it could be very useful in many, actually, a lot of different states, Arizona, New Mexico, and even more. All right, I see that we have one person from Pakistan. Welcome and hello, XXXYYY. Good morning, Jose. Good to see you. Is this your first time here? It looks like Jose is listening from Argentina. Did I get that right? I'm not great with flags. I think, oh, Guatemala. It says right there. It says right there, Guatemala. Welcome, welcome. It's so good to see all of you leaving me a note here in the chat. So I haven't heard from anybody yet. Is English your first or second language? Or is it your third language? I'm curious if maybe fourth or fifth. I know many people around the world speak several languages. Okay, so I studied French for more than 6 years, couldn't speak any, don't remember any. And when it came time to, not when it came time, there was a time, I should say, that I decided I really wanted to learn Spanish. And it was very difficult because, like I said, it was very expensive. And I would go to the library and try to check out materials, but anything that had a recording, like a cassette tape or a CD, parts would be missing. You couldn't get the whole thing. And that was the only way that I could pay. Actually, it didn't cost. That's the only way I could afford. It was the least expensive way to learn a language. So I tried everything I could and was not able to really learn much, but I did a little bit with what I had. When the time came that you could use the internet, it changed my life completely. When I realized that I could start learning a language online with YouTube, I was very, very excited and started learning Spanish here on YouTube, which I still think is one of the very best ways to learn a language by yourself is by using YouTube. And so I began learning Spanish, was very excited, and started finding a lot of other ways that I could learn this language. And then, like I told you, when I came to a time where I felt pretty solid, pretty pretty good about my level with Spanish, I started looking at 2 different languages. I looked at several, but because I had always wanted to learn German, of course, that was one of them, but there's more to that. And then the other one that I chose because of the ability to learn another alphabet was Korean, because I had heard that that was an alphabet that wasn't too difficult. Now, we don't say too very often, but it's a very casual way to say like very. It wasn't too difficult. Um, Great to see people from Washington, Poland, Moscow, Argentina, Puerto Rico. Welcome, welcome. So I started looking at both Korean and German and learning both in different ways. Ways I had used with Spanish here on YouTube, and with some other things, some apps and different, different things you can find online. And if you've seen old videos of mine, probably heard me talk about that because I was doing that for a little while and really enjoying it. I was having a lot of fun with it and learning. And I got so that I could write all of the Korean alphabet. I could write a few words. I don't really remember much anymore. But the reason that is because I decided I needed to focus on one language. Trying to learn two brand new languages at one time was too much for me, and it wasn't something that I had to do. I know there are people who have to learn two more languages, and I really feel for them because it is very difficult, much more difficult than learning one language to a certain level, then adding another, and then maybe adding a third. So I've had students who've moved to Canada as an example. I had a student from Azerbaijan who moved to Canada and had to learn English and French at the same time. It blew my mind. She was amazing, and I've had other students since then who are also amazing, and I applaud them. In other words, I'm very amazed by them. Welcome, Brazil, Vietnam, Pakistan again. Anyway, so I was learning a little and not really getting into it when I decided that I wanted to try something different in the way that I was learning, the way I was trying. I decided to just learn German because I thought, well, this is something I've always wanted to do. Who knows how long I have to do it? So I'm going to do that. So we could say it's been on my bucket list. I'm going to put that on here, on my bucket list. Have you ever heard this phrase? Do you know what this means? It's been on my bucket list, or it is on my bucket list. Tana, do we have a bucket out there? Oh, the bucket that I can think of is full of yucky stuff. But a bucket is like a container with a handle that you can carry something in. Usually you use it outside, but you might use it inside. You might know it because of something you would use at the beach. Little children will have a shovel and a bucket to put sand in, and then they can make sand castles. And um, I'm curious if you know what it means if something is on your bucket list. Remind me, and I'll tell you what that is here in just a minute. I'll give you a minute to type what it might be. So, learning German was on my bucket list. Korean is now on my bucket list. Oh, here's a bucket, kind of. This is kind of like a bucket. This is a big pot with a handle, but buckets look a lot like this. This is one we used to put water on our wood burning stove. Thank you, T. So the bucket, sand. What was I saying? I got distracted. Oh, so I've put learning Korean on my bucket list, and the reason I decided it needed to be only one more language is because it was just too much. And the second reason, well, the reason I decided it was German is because German was on my bucket list. And the third reason was because I wanted to try a different way of learning or acquiring a language. When I started learning Spanish, even though I was using the internet, I was using a more traditional way of learning. I would even say, an old way of learning. It's becoming very outdated, meaning we're not using that way of learning as much anymore. And I think at some point we won't use it much at all because it isn't as effective as new things we're learning about language instead of studying, which, if you enjoy doing that, that might be a good thing for you. But if it's something you don't like, it could be more effective to acquire a language. Instead of studying, you acquire it by listening to a lot of information you understand, which is what you're doing right now. And what I was doing in Spanish, but when I started to listen to more comprehensible input, comprehensible input is just a way to say listening to things I understand 95% or more. My Spanish, which felt like it was stuck, it wasn't stuck, it was moving slowly. Suddenly, I was learning more quickly and I felt like I made a jump in my fluency. I was sold on comprehensible input. I've always believed in comprehensible input, but the more I learned about it, the more I wanted to experience this from the beginning. So even though I had learned a few words in German, I decided to stop studying German and start using comprehensible input. I found out right away that this is much more difficult to do with German than English or Spanish because there is a lot of information on the internet with English and Spanish comprehensible input. There isn't as much in German, but I found two channels that I really like. I'll give them a shout out, meaning I will mention them here if you're interested in learning German. The first one is Naturlich. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Naturlich German. I'll write it here. It basically means natural German. And I'm not even sure if I'm spelling this correctly, but there it is. It's fabulous. The woman who does it is named Anna. She's a great comprehensible input teacher. And how can you do comprehensible from the beginning? She uses a lot of gestures and she draws a lot, and I can understand a lot of what she's doing without knowing any German. It's very exciting. Now, I do want to tell you one of the difficult things I found, but first I want to tell you the second one, which is I'm not thinking of her name right now, but the woman is on a channel called Germany, and I think it's also called comprehensible input on YouTube. You will be able to find it. Katrina or Karina, her name starts with a K. And she's also very good. She has a great channel. The sad thing was that Anna of Naturlich German, Espy, come here, um, isn't making any more videos, but the videos she has are fabulous. Okay, I see that Suna says that, well, it went away, that learning Korean was on their bucket list too. So let's see if bucket list, Rita says bucket list, a list of things that I'd like to accomplish. Yes, but there's more to it. That's true, but there's more to it. Yes, there is a film about bucket list. Yes. Estevan says there's a film about best bucket list. This is true. So I will tell you a little bit more about this. A bucket list is a list of things you want to accomplish, a list of things you want to do before you die. And the reason that that's an integral part of it is that we have another saying in English. It's not a really great saying, but the saying is to kick the bucket. And to kick the bucket means to die. Now, let me just tell you here, it is not a kind way to say this. It is very informal. I have almost never heard a woman say it like this. It's a little bit crude, meaning some people would consider it rude, um, and definitely it's very strong. Um, but interestingly, this is how the phrase to have something on your bucket list came about. And to say that is not rude or crude. It's very common. A lot of people use this word, whether they are a man or a woman, this phrase, I should say. And learning Korean is now on my bucket list. Um, one person says, in my honest opinion, German is a little rude or harsh. German is a harsh language. I wouldn't call it rude, uh, but it is a stronger, it has a lot more strong, it has stronger sounds. We don't say more stronger, by the way. It has stronger sounds. Okay, let me see what Mark is asking. And then I want to tell you why it's a little more, uh, the things I have found out about comprehensible input that are difficult. Okay. Mark Mueller, I think, says how to learn to understand English by ear. I ruined all my skills except listening. This is the hardest thing for me. English is harder to hear than German. Mark, it looks from your last name that maybe German is your native language. Is that true? I want to answer this question by saying this is what I've been talking about. I'm giving treats to SB and Pippa, by the way. Pippa and SB love these little pieces of chicken, and it helps them to remember to be quiet during the live here, during the class. So, comprehensible input is your answer, Mark. You need to find a lot, and I mean a lot, uh, of you need a lot of things that you can listen to that you understand. And if you are not understanding, so for instance, if there's like you're not understanding more than 95%, then look for things that are easier to understand. How much are you understanding of what I'm saying right now, Mark? That will help me to know. You're probably doing it right now. Andre says, hello, dear Tanya. How beautiful is your work? Donate your time to people who want to improve in another foreign language. I wish you the best. Thank you so much, Andre. I say this a lot when I'm answering or responding to comments here on YouTube. These kinds of comments are so very helpful. Thank you so much. It really reminds me how much this is needed, because sometimes I feel like nothing is happening. So thank you so much. And if you do love this show, please share it with your friends who also want to learn English. Okay, Liam, as a Korean, I'm happy that you have learning Korean on your bucket list. I am too, Liam. Mark, you are a native English speaker. Is it true that sometimes you don't understand other English speakers? Yes, Mark, believe it or not, I was just talking about that in our She Speaks Fluency program for women, that yes, sometimes I don't understand other English speakers, and some accents are more difficult for me than others. Not all the time, but sometimes when I watch British television, I have to put the subtitles on for a little while to see what they said. I cannot understand it. Their accent is very strong sometimes, and especially if it's a historical program like back in time, that can be even more difficult. And also their grammar can be a little different. And of course, they have different sayings. So, yes, sometimes I can't understand, but I love learning even different accents in English. Um, all right. I am going to wrap it up here. I'm going to finish, but first I want to tell you a little bit more about comprehensible input, which is that it has been difficult for me learning totally with comprehensible input at the very beginning because I have been trained to learn and to teach the old way. Now I teach a new way, a way that I think is much, much more effective. But I still want to learn vocabulary and grammar. There's nothing wrong with that. If that's the case for you, it would be totally okay to use both. For me, I really want to see how it will go with only comprehensible input and the comprehensible input way of learning that was or is talked a lot about linguist Stephen Krashen. And so I'm not doing that. I'm resisting doing that. I'm saying no to myself and only using comprehensible input, even though it's very difficult to find. Espy, do you want to bark? Come here. And what I have found now that I have done that more is that it is very rewarding because now I am so excited about all that I'm learning without studying grammar, without studying vocabulary. And I knew already that this was very effective for intermediate and above, but now I can see that is also very effective as beginners. And there are so many ways for this to expand and making to make learning a language for people even easier, even more enjoyable. That's the part that's really important to me. So, speaking of She Speaks, our fluency program, if you're a woman who's intermediate or above and you would like to learn English with me, I will put a link below where you can click and get more information and watch my free class that will include information about our She Speaks fluency program. And then you can get on the mailing so that you can get more information about that program. And I see a bright green thing. Esteban, thank you so much. I've never had anybody do this. I think you bought a super thanks. I see that you have donated money to our English channel. Thank you so much. You say the only English YouTube channel for English learners with really live streaming. Thank you very much for your time and such a good attitude. Esteban, thank you so much. And I will be live again this week at 4:30 on Wednesday. I know that's a completely different time, but if you can join me, that will be 4:30 Los Angeles, California time. And again, I just want to thank everyone for coming and participating and listening and donating and sharing with your friends. And if you're ready to learn even more English, I will put another one of my videos here so that you can learn from more comprehensible input. Thank you, everyone. I will see you there.